So here's what I get when I go to do a video on how much protein we should be eating, and I'm surrounded with Nestle Toll House cookies and party-sized bags of potato chips in the kitchen when I'm trying to do this video. So that is not what this video is about, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that, especially when as we get older, how much protein do we really need, especially like over 50, because things change a little bit. We change, our bodies change. There's a lot of changes that happen, and there's some differences that we need to account for that make our needs a little bit different than if we read the latest Men's Health magazine or something, where they kind of make blanket statements. And I know there's a lot of research on how much protein do we really need, and a lot of times we just kind of take it as that's the amount that I need. And so I want to do this to share a little bit more about some of the things that we need to account for and how to determine how much protein we really need, especially over 50. So one of these things, this thing here, if you look at this, this was some chicken gravy that I made the other day. And this was really cool. This is just real quick, has nothing to do with the protein, but something I wanted to share. This is a really good recipe and made quite a bit. This was just coming off of one chicken, like that much in a mason jar. And really, all this is melting some butter. So we put a chicken, like a 5-pound chicken, because we got the kids and everybody. So we made a 5-pound chicken in an Instant Pot, seasoned it up and everything, and then put like a mixture of some butter and seasonings and rubbed it all in there, cooked it in an Instant Pot. And so we took the drippings from that and took the chicken out, take the drippings of that, melted some butter. I put the drippings aside, and then in the Instant Pot, melted some butter in there, like 3 tablespoons of it. And the original recipe we got it from called for whisking in 3 tablespoons of flour. So basically a tablespoon of flour for each tablespoon of butter. Whisk that all in, kind of thickens it up and everything. I don't know if that's called a roux, I think, when you make that. But anyway, instead of using the flour, what I should have done was use arrowroot powder, because for me, I don't deal with gluten very well, so I stay away from it at least during the week until I get my treats on the weekend. But that was a good option. Could have used some arrowroot powder and then add the drippings all back in there, and you just whisk it up and saute it until it thickens up, and it makes a gravy that comes out perfect consistency and flavor and everything. So that's the way to do it. I just used the regular flour because I wasn't planning on having any, and my mistake. Now I'm looking at that going, damn, I wish I would have done that, would have had it. So anyway, back to the topic today. How much protein do we need when we're over 50? Even when we get over 40, we have changes that start to happen as early as our 30s. I think that's a lot of times when we start to notice things. So a lot of things that we have to understand is that our needs can and do change as we get older based on a number of different factors. So it's not enough to really, like I said, read the latest Men's Health or whatever it is, or the YouTube video, watch that, or whatever, these recommendations are. Oh, if you're a male, you need this many grams, or if you're a female, this much. There's a lot of differences that happen. So, rather than try to pinpoint this many grams or this many calories, I don't do that stuff because there's too many differences that happen. And, our nutritional needs and our calorie needs, or our energy requirements, they can and do change very often. They can change day to day, literally, depending on a lot of different things, and activity level's kind of one thing. A lot of other things we have to look at are things like, activity level, obviously, days where we are more physically active versus days when we're not physically active at all are going to change our requirements. We're going to need more protein the more active we are typically, but there's also other considerations that we have to take into account. So we have to look at things like our digestive capacity. How healthy is your digestive system? The healthier it is, the more nutrition that you are going to extract from the food you eat, period. So basically, you're going to absorb nutrients better when your digestive system is really healthy and functioning well, rather than if you're like me, who's done all kinds of damage to it over the years from doing stupid ass things with food and dieting and all these kinds of other things that take its toll. So if our digestion's not healthy, we don't want to just pile down all kinds of grams of protein and things like that, because if we're not really extracting nutrients very well from it, we can just back everything up, and then we get bloated, we put on weight, we don't feel good, and all that kind of stuff happens. So other things we have to consider is how much muscle we have. The more muscle that you have on your body, the more or the higher your protein needs are going to be anyway. And so as we get into our 30s and beyond, we start to lose muscle mass, we start to lose bone density, our metabolism naturally starts to decrease, and it happens pretty significantly with every decade. There's research done on that, so it adds up. So even more important to address these kinds of considerations, or to consider these things as we get older, because these things make it a lot different than when we were in our 20s. We can get away with doing a lot of other things and eating a lot of other foods maybe that we can't get away with now, right? Our digestive capacity was probably a lot better than it is now. So these are things that we have to look into. So, one of the things to look at, I do a lot of, researching over the years. I've done a lot, and, there's some different kind of research that's out there, I guess you could say. On one hand, there's the common research was that we need about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. So there's that research, and there's research that backs that up, and that's a relatively pretty safe starting point. And I would say it's a starting point because there's going to be differences. Within the research that they take, they're really just kind of taking it's based on a curve, and they're kind of looking at who falls in the middle, the majority, and where the middle of that kind of curve falls, and then they make recommendations for that. The things that we have to consider are the outliers, right? Those of us who don't necessarily fall nice and neatly into the middle of that curve. So you have to kind of take these things as maybe a starting point and then adjust as you go, because you don't know really where on that curve you exist. So there's that school of thought. One gram per pound of body weight, if you are reasonably physically active, is a pretty good place. Now it's going to be a lot less if you're not really physically active, and if you're very physically active, such as you're a high level athlete, you're involved in athletics and things like that, the needs are probably going to go up. They can go up as high as 2 grams and possibly more, again, just depending. So there's other research though that's been done too. So there's research done by Brad Pilon, who, if you don't know who he is, he wrote a book called Eat, Stop, Eat, and he also wrote another book called How Much Protein. And he really did a lot of research into this. And his research has shown that by and large, most people will need between 90 to 120 grams of protein per day. His research has pointed, and I even spoke to him about this before years ago and asked him about that, but he is saying that, and his research points to that, if we go beyond the 120 grams a day, that we can go beyond it, and it may not be harmful necessarily, but that there's no significant benefit from going higher than that. And again, that's what he found for most people, and at least a minimum was about 90 grams a day. So again, these are kind of areas that we can use to gauge as starting points. And again, really the only way we really know is to test it out, assess it, and then adjust as we go, right? So that's kind of the research on it there. I think some of the things that we want to consider, the importance of protein as well, right? That it's very important in terms of helping us to not only maintain muscle mass, right? Because again, as we get older, we start losing this stuff. We start losing bone density, muscle mass, we lose strength, we lose power, we lose then, everything falls from that, balance, coordination, right? So, it's imperative that we're getting enough protein to maintain our muscle mass, which helps to drive our metabolism anyways. That's one of the other things that protein does for us, especially as we're over 50, even over 40 and over 30, is it helps give a little bit of a boost to the metabolism. So, basically our digestive system has to work harder. Our bodies have to work harder to break down and digest protein, which means that we use more energy, we burn more calories, and so our metabolism gets a little bit of a boost from having to digest the protein. But also that protein is less likely to be stored as fat in the body. Now, that doesn't give us a license to just eat all kinds of protein thinking, hell yeah, I can just have what I want, because, bottom line is that if we eat beyond what our bodies can use for energy, use to support growth, muscle, bone, and excrete, then we're going to store it as fat anyways. But, within reason, it does provide a little bit of a bump in the metabolism. One of the other things is that it helps us to feel fuller longer. So, if you're like me and you struggle with food cravings, overeating, like these are things that, I really have to be on my nutrition so that I don't get those cravings, or if I do, at least I can deal with them. I used to be at the point where it was just out of control. I could not control them. I would just binge eat on all kinds of stuff, and it wasn't good stuff, because how it is when you get those cravings, man, you binge on all kinds of stuff that you shouldn't be binging on, right? That doesn't help help us achieve the goals we have for our bodies for the most part. So, it does help us feel fuller longer, and it balances us out, our our hunger. So we're not, feeling too full if we eat the right amounts, and we're not going like real hungry. There's more of like an even keel, which helps with our energy levels as well. Because if our energy levels are balanced out for the most part, we avoid the big swings. And with energy swings come mood swings. And then that's when thoughts and emotions come into that. And all of that stuff drives or could be a trigger and a driver to overeating and eating the wrong things if it's not balanced out right. So these are just a few things I wanted to talk about. In terms of serving sizes and things like that, like I personally don't measure out grams or count calories or things like that. I think it's not the most accurate thing to do. I think most people don't really need to do that. There is a certain point where I think it can get there and that you might need to do it. But I think by and large, for most people, we don't need to do it. If you like doing that sort of thing, great. But I don't think that it's entirely accurate. It's very difficult to track. Not so much what you're taking in, but what your body's actually absorbing and what your needs are. Because like I said, our needs can and do change day to day, literally. So there's no accurate way to just say, I need this many grams every day of protein or any other nutrient for that matter. But sizes, what I find is really a simple way to know. Like I try to include a serving or two of protein at each meal or snack. I do the best I can with that. I'm not always perfect on it. But I use either the size of a deck of cards, because that gives a pretty accurate indicator of what a serving of protein is, or it's about the size of the palm of your hand. So these aren't any secrets or anything that you probably don't already know, but it's just good to know. It's a way to accurately assess how much you're getting. And then that way, when you know what you're getting and how much you're getting over the course of each day, you can kind of see what you're doing. And then if you need to adjust things because you're either not getting the results you want, or maybe you are, it's easy to track what you're doing that's getting the results. Or if you're not, it's easy to make adjustments when you have something consistent to measure and test things by. So hopefully this was useful for you, and that's all I've got for today. So I will leave you guys for now. This has gone on long enough, but if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Other than that, you guys stay strong, and I'll talk to you next time.